let's first read through verses 1 through 13, and then we'll go back and take a look at this. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. Now this was either Mount Hermon, which is about 12 miles from Caesarea Philippi, where they were in northern Israel, or it could have been Mount Tabor back in the Galilee region. Verse 2, and he was transfigured before them. Now that word transfigured is the same word that Paul uses when he talks about how we are to be transfigured into by the renewal of our mind. He says, don't be conformed to the image of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's where we get the word metamorphosis. And it's an outward appearance that is generated from within. It's not the same thing as putting on a costume. Your outer appearance can be one, and your inner character can be quite another. But this is an outer example, an outpouring of something that comes from within. So he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And Mark tells us that it was bleached whiter than anybody could ever bleach anything on earth, essentially, is what he said. So, they had Clorox times infinity there. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Parentheses, shut up. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. And as they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. And the disciples asked him, Then why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come? He answered, Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come. And they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. I could go on and on about the wonderful, incredible parallels between this and when Moses went up on the mountain. And I'm going to mention some of them here this morning. But first I just want to read a little bit and jot down this reference, Exodus chapter 24, verses 15 through 18. It says, Then Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Now, maybe this is why Jesus waited 6 days from the end of the last account in order to go up on the mountain, although Luke says it was 8 days, but we won't get into the differences there. Even as Moses' face glowed when he came into the presence of God, Jesus' entire being glowed and shone brighter than anything on earth on the Mount of Transfiguration. It was a special glimpse of Jesus in his glory. Why? Because it affirmed everything that he had said. You heard the words that I spoke, and you've seen the miracles that I performed, but now I want to show you who I really am. And they went up on the mountain all by themselves, and Jesus was revealed in the glory that he would have in his kingdom. And if you want a fuller explanation, no pun intended, you can go to Revelation chapter 1, verses 9 through 18, where this person is described in much more complete detail. This is what Jesus will look like upon his return to rule and reign. Now the disciples apparently thought, this is it. Peter goes, Jesus is talking to Moses and Elijah, right? And Peter's just great. He just goes right in. Excuse me, guys. Hey, guys. It's really good that we're here. How about if we build some tents for you guys? And he's just, they didn't know what to say. So he just, the first thing that pops into his mouth. And what he was probably thinking was, man, this is a fulfillment of the Festival of Booths when we made tents, and all that because of Moses' being here. So let's make some tents and we're going to start the kingdom right here, right now. I always wonder, how did they know it was Moses and Elijah? Because I don't think Moses and Elijah had Facebook accounts where they had their picture in their profile. This is a vision. This is a supernatural vision they're having. And in those times, it's kind of like when you're dreaming, and you ever have those dreams where, you say, I was in a particular place, but it was really somewhere else, and I just knew that it was somewhere else? You're all looking at me like, you must have the craziest dreams in the world. Yeah, I probably do. Anyway, they probably just knew it. They knew supernaturally this was Moses and Elijah standing there. And so Peter goes, hey, let's build a couple of tents for you, or 3 tents for you 3. Well, Jesus, we know why he's there. Why Moses and Elijah? Why were those guys there? Well, Moses represented the law, and Elijah represented the prophets, the 2 major portions of the Old Testament. And they were personally attesting to the divinity of this person, Jesus Christ. So again, the law and the prophets spoke about Jesus. At one point when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, he says, you study the Scriptures because in them you think you have life, but it is they that speak of me. So here on the Mount of Transfiguration, you literally have the law and the prophets represented by Moses and Elijah speaking to Jesus about his coming kingdom. And so there's another reason why it's possible that it's these 2, and that is that, number 1, we don't know where Moses is buried. We know that right before the children of Israel came into the Promised Land, that God let Moses die, but he buried him in some unknown location, or I should say an undisclosed location. Elijah got carried bodily up into heaven on the chariots of fire. Dun 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 dun. Anyway, never mind. So there is a thought that not only was it Moses and Elijah because they didn't really die in the normal way, we don't know where their bodies were laid, and secondly, there's also a thinking that these 2, because of that, become the 2 witnesses that we read about in the book of the Revelation chapter 11. There's another point as to why these were Moses and Elijah, and that's because, remember in the previous chapter, when Jesus asked who the people said that I am, Moses and Elijah were 2 of the choices. So Jesus is standing there with Moses and Elijah, so he's saying, guess what? It's not Moses or Elijah. So he's kind of narrowing down the possibilities, again, of who he was. So here's Peter, again, wanting to celebrate, wanting to start God's kingdom. And you know what I'm struck with about that? What does Peter say? It's good that we're here. It's good that we're here. There was this feeling that came over Peter when he is presented with Jesus Christ glorified that says, yeah, this is it. This is the place where I want to be. Because what he was getting was a glimpse